Welcome into another edition. Here we go. Here we are, episode 118, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. Talking today, our main topic starting late. Thank you for joining us, as always, on the audio side, Apple, Google, Spotify, whichever platform you may be listening on, and of course on YouTube, the Lab Epstein Hitting podcast page. And I got a great email from YouTube this week saying that soon enough we're going to have handles for our pages, so it's going to be a lot easier for me to say rather than just saying the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page, because that is a mouthful. Anyway, okay, let's get started. We've got a lot to get to today. Let me bring in professional evaluator, successful business owner, former coach, friend, and co-host. A little bit under the weather today. Again, he was questionable like I was a couple of weeks ago, but here he is, front and center, ready to go. Jake Epstein.
Ready to go. I got my good deep voice going.
You do, and you have tea, which is good. And I don't know if it's green tea, but tea anytime you're sick or your voice isn't 100% is great. It's exactly what you need.
Thanks, Doc.
Look it up, Google it, or DuckDuckGo it.
Dr. Google.
No, I'm not. No, I Googled it. I did my research. Good. I've had my issue. Remember 2 weeks ago, I had my voice issue.
Yeah.
I had some tea with me and some coffee. Last week, episode 117, please go back and listen. If you haven't done, watch it too. If you haven't done so already, we had the legend, Jerry Weinstein, a professional coach currently with the Colorado Rockies. He's been in professional baseball for 40 plus years, coaching college and pro for 50 plus years. And he said something I had to ask him last week because we are a hitting podcast, Ep. And I said, what are your absolutes, Jerry, to hitting? When it comes to hitting, what are your absolutes? And number one, this is the first thing that he said. Hitting is all about timing. How many times on this show have we said that?
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
You have no chance if your timing is off.
Right.
You have no chance.
And he was clear cut and upfront about it. Hitting is about timing, and he went into as to why hitting and timing go together. If you don't have the timing, forget all the other mechanics. You and I were talking about that before. We've talked about that on this show as well. If you don't have the timing, forget the mechanics.
Yeah, Jerry's the best. I mean, that guy's. When I was growing up, he was a legendary coach at, I think, Sacramento City College. And, I mean, that was 25 years ago, right? When I was in high school, he was like the dude as a junior college coach. They won state titles left and right. So that guy's probably forgotten more about baseball than about everybody on the planet.
Yeah. You know, by the way, another thing about him, he says hello. You know, he played with your dad. He played with Mike Epstein, the legend.
Yeah, he's got a great story. He said, did he tell you?
He mentioned your dad's big hands, which you've mentioned on this program many times.
The last time I talked to Jerry, he said, your dad was the greatest 14-year-old baseball player ever to walk the planet.
He did. I think he did say something along the lines of that last week.
Yeah, he was. My dad was that 14-year-old freak that threw 90-something miles an hour from the left side and hit bombs.
Yeah.
And he just blew his arm out, you know. I think he was a sophomore. He would have been a pitcher. But he blew his bicep tendon in the bullpen, maybe his sophomore year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't do anything about it. So he just stuck to football.
Right. Jerry was talking to you last week about how big your dad's hands were. And he was just kind of discussing your dad and how he knew your dad and that connection. And I also made that connection about how the baseball community is so small. You know, eventually the person you see or that rival that you have, it's going to come all the way back around. It'll circle back around and you'll meet that person again.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when you really
it's crazy.
think about it, it's crazy.
It is.
You see it on the field in Major League Baseball, right? And you see it off the field, right? The Astros are playing the Yankees again for the 18th time in the American League Championship Series. What's old is new. What's new is old, right?
I know. And apparently they were ahead of the game with everything.
Correct.
The Astros. I mean,
it is amazing. It is amazing talking about Major League Baseball with the Astros and what they are doing. I hope that we're going a little bit off topic here, but I was very angry in 2019, 2020 when I found out that they cheated. Right. Because I've always used this comparison. I said, hand Russell Wilson the defensive playbook and the defensive plays for his opponent that week. That's what he would go. He would be perfect. He'd have a perfect quarterback rating. That's exactly pretty much what the Astros did, just in a baseball and computer sense. But I hope people are kind of buy that now because they're a different team. They don't have Springer. They don't have Correa. Offensively, they're more of a bat to ball type team. They still have the power mixed in. I'm not sure if they still have Brantley. I should know that, but
He's hurt. Yeah, they
he's
still
hurt.
have him.
Okay. But they get their power from Alvarez. They get a little bit of their power from Bregman, who's an all-around great hitter. I'm watching this
Yeah.
Astros team in the postseason. Don't know how much you've watched of them in the
Yeah, but
postseason.
his exit velocity wasn't high enough on that home run, so it shouldn't have counted.
That's right. That's according to the Yankees analytics department. My point being, though, the Astros are a really good team, and I think it's time we recognize the job that they've done as a front office when it comes to analytics, when it comes to scouting, research and development, and just overall roster construction, especially we talked about this a few weeks ago on the show, lineup construction.
Yeah, they figured it out. I it starts in their minor league system. I
Yeah.
read an article about how they really put attention to detail with winning. They want guys to win. A lot of minor leagues, it's like, you just kind of go out there and do your thing, but they want to win. They want to win a title at every level. They want their players to have that pressure on them, about winning a title when they're 19, 20, 21 years old. So they've definitely, led the pack in creating an environment in the minor league system for player development and mental development as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. I don't like that notion of, the minor league games, they don't matter. They don't, it's just player development. Part of player development is winning. You have win games and
Absolutely.
instill that winning culture, something that the Angels have failed to do and failed Mike Trout for many, many years. There was a quote, and we did Mike Trout and his swing breakdown a couple of weeks ago, episode 117, Mechanical Breakdown Series, Volume 36. Go ahead and watch that on the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. He may have had a quote that I found this week, quote on mentality when he's hitting at the plate. The quote was, hitting is hard. One thing on your mind, square up the baseball. That's it. Let's square up the baseball. He's not thinking of, according to him, he's not thinking about all these different mechanics and all these different analytics and all of these different ways the body moves when he's at the plate. He's thinking about hitting the ball as hard as he possibly can. Again, square up the baseball.
Yeah, and we've seen it time and again during these playoffs, especially with the Phillies on two strikes. Right? I mean, every time the Yankees get to two strikes in these postseason, they strike out. The Phillies have, I don't know how many, they have a ton of RBIs with two strikes. Harper had a fastball middle away. He fought off a couple good pitches that he didn't miss, then got one that was more hittable, hit a line drive into left center that was just, he was just trying to find barrel, and he did. And you have Segura, who, asked out one and reached and hit a ball 6 inches off the plate for 2 RBI base hit.
I love that guy.
Those are still barrels. They're just not swung hard because they're in protection mode. And it's true. It's I don't know. Somebody out there copied me on a quote. It was someone's home run. I don't remember. Was it Bader's home run or something where he kind of reached for it a little bit, and they're like, "Oh, so much for the ground force people," and this, that, and the other. How was he able to hit this out? I was like, well, he's a grown man. He's very strong, and he hit the ball right on the barrel. Like it's going to go out of the park. It may not go out of the park all the time when you're fooled, but if you give yourself a chance, that's what it's about. And some guys can just think that. Some guys can have a plan. I'm going to look for a fastball here. I'm going to look for a breaking ball here. I will say Harper's looking for breaking balls on just about every first pitch. He's taking really good, balanced hacks on first pitch breaking balls. I can't believe he hasn't hit them yet because he's getting them to hit, and he keeps fouling them off. But you could tell he's sitting on them because there's no adjustment to that breaking pitch. So have that plan, and then trust the work that you've done. Trust that your swing works. Trust that you put in all the time and energy, and that it's going to pay off. But if you're up there just thinking, "Oh, I gotta let this get deep, or I gotta stay on top, or I gotta get underneath this sinker," that plays. Some guys think like that. I've heard Bregman on a sinker say, "I want to aim an inch below the ball." Wow, that's impressive. Or on a 4-seam fastball, I'm going to aim an inch above the ball. So
You have to be so confident in your mechanics, though, to do that, to be able to think like that and try to aim for a specific spot on the ball. I mean, you have to be so confident and feel so loose at the plate in what you're doing mechanically.
Yeah, for him, it makes sense.
Right.
Like, it makes sense. He's a pretty good high ball hitter because he cheats and he knows. I mean, that guy's overly prepared. He's, super type A personality, Bregman, and he's been preparing since he was in high school. He takes it. He's very extreme with his preparation and with his work ethic, and that's why he's so great. Doesn't mean everyone has to do that, but it definitely has made him who he is today. And all those extra swings he's taken, where he's in control of his body, and he knows where his hands are, he knows where his body is, and he knows what works for him. Most importantly, then he can do things like that. I'm gonna stay on top of this. It's a bad. I'm not gonna get beat with a fastball up. Or
Yeah.
I'm not going to get beat with a fastball down. He's very good at making those adjustments.
Yeah. So again, go back and check out Mike Trout's Mechanical Breakdown. It was volume 36 on the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. Subscribe to that, and subscribe, of course, Apple, Google, Spotify, whichever platform you may be listening on, and leave a review. We greatly appreciate that. I say that a lot, but we really do appreciate that. And you can email us too, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Yeah, Mike Trout's quote on simplicity, it got me thinking. I was watching film this week of a couple of prospects who were drafted in the first round last year. Zach Neto of the Angels, Brooks Lee of the Twins. I want to ask you a question as it pertains to them and what they do, not necessarily those two guys, but my takeaway and analysis watching both guys on film, they both have flaws at the plate in their swing that could hamper their future success. But with Lee, I'm watching him and I see a swing that is more simple, right? With Neto, he has this huge load. By the way, Lee's a switch hitter. Neto's a right-handed batter, but Neto has this huge load, this huge leg kick. He sometimes gets very long with his swing. So full context, just to give you some power numbers as it pertains to both guys. Neto, he slugged 476 last year. Lee slugged 451. So they're pretty much in the same range, right? They both had 5 home runs in their professional debuts. But my point is, player development is really hard. For those who don't know, it's not just easy.
Yes.
It's not an easy thing to create players. It's not an easy thing to create prospects. It's no walk in the park trying to develop professional baseball players who you hope are going to be future major leaguers and contribute to your team when your team is in the postseason. You've got hitting coordinators, pitching coordinators, a bunch of coaches, different ideas, opinions, egos, everything. If you have these two type hitters, not necessarily Neto or Lee, but those two guys, same position, shortstop, different mechanics and swings, do you think I can make the argument that you'd want to take the guy with the simple mechanics, the simplicity in his swing, in this case, Lee, than the other guy, because you have a lot of money invested in these two first rounders, millions of dollars. And with more complicated mechanics comes that messiness that if one of those guys struggles and happens to be the guy with the mechanics that he's got the big leg kick, he's got a lot going on in his swing. I don't know, as a player development department, you kind of want to shy away from that, no?
Yes. I would agree with you. I don't know if excuse me, style and rhythm would scare me,
Mm-hmm.
meaning a big leg kick. Things that scare me happen typically from the front foot landing to extension. If there's something in there that is risky, that's risky to change. If it's a leg kick or rhythm, if they get going early enough, then they're usually going to be okay. If they start their load on time, if they get their foot down on time, and how that relates to every player is totally different. But that I wouldn't be as concerned about the risk. But if there was some kind of hand issue or elbow issue that I've had a lot of experience with being difficult to change, then that would definitely set up a red flag of maybe we don't risk $3 to $5 million on this player. Now, that's just one part of the equation. If I see this player consistently and this player squares up baseballs consistently, even with a swing that's kind of funky, maybe it doesn't matter. Some guys square up more balls than others. Look at Mike Piazza. That swing looked like a golf swing. It looked so long, and he squared stuff up high, low, in, out. That's why he was a 62nd round draft pick, right? The dude wasn't a great catcher. He wasn't a great hitter. He had some power, but it didn't look right. And then he shocked the world, right? By a guy that can slow his heart rate down. He had good vision. No moment was too big for him, and he found barrels. So that, to me, sometimes you can have a great swing, and I could watch a player take 15, 20 at bats, and if they just don't find a barrel, then there's something in there, whether it's stress, whether they're trying to do too much, whether their thought process or their approach is off. That doesn't matter, even though the swing. I've had players with just fantastic swings and mechanically correct swings and good rhythm, and they don't perform because there are other variables out there. And I don't care how good you are if you get stressed out and you try to do too much in games, then great things. I mean, Josh Donaldson right now is a perfect example of that. Not that his whole career has been like that, but he got a lot of pressure on him. People are booing him, and he's trying to prove that he's worth, what they paid for him. He's worth to be a Yankee and this and that, and it's eating him up a little bit, and that's hard. So,
Yeah.
Long answer to a really simple question. Yes, if there was a steep mechanical issue in there that I've had experience with trouble fixing, then I probably would pass on that player unless they did something extraordinary in another field.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Mike Piazza. We'll be breaking down his swing, another Mechanical Breakdown Series Gold Edition in a few weeks. I can't wait to do that one because he was taught hitting by the one and only Ted Williams.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know
They
that.
work together.
Oh.
I see a lot of Ted Williams swing in Piazza.
Yeah, a little bit. He
Similar
taught me
size
how to,
too, similar height.
Yeah, he taught me how to wrap my catcher's mitt.
Oh, really?
That's what I remember about Mike Piazza. Yeah, my dad used to consult with the Dodgers when we lived in California, so we'd drive up to Dodger Stadium. This is when Mike Piazza was there, Karros was there, Reggie Smith was the hitting coach. He was really good. Trying to think, Lasorda was probably the manager at that time.
Oh, okay, so that was okay.
I mean, I was like in high school, maybe junior high school, and yeah, he was totally cool guy. And he's like, "Hey, man," he gave me. I'm trying to think if I don't think he gave me the mitt. Somebody gave me a catcher's mitt, and then he's like, "Here's how you wrap it every day, boom, like this." And he gave me 3 sanitary socks and 2 baseballs.
What are sanitary socks?
Those were the socks you would wear under stirrups.
Huh.
The white socks you wear under a stirrup.
Okay.
They called them sanitary.
He used to wear stirrups, Piazza.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I used to wear stirrups too.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow. Are you going to teach people how to wrap a catcher's mitt on one of these episodes?
Man, I might teach you how to wrap your knee if you're wearing high socks with actual stirrups.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's a
I'm
big
down.
one. You get your pants, you pull your pants up, then you got to wrap. You take your pants down, you wrap your sanitary sock and stirrup over the bottom hem. That way, when you pull your pants back up, your socks stay in place.
All
Who'd
right.
have thought we'd have to have this conversation?
We've gotten into the point of the episode. This is like the middle of the episode where we're talking about taking our pants, pulling our pants up and down.
That's right. One leg at a time. Hey, what's his name the other night pitching for, who was it? The Astros. He had like the old school painted on stirrups.
Oh,
He was a pitcher. Oh my gosh.
No, it wasn't Valdez. It wasn't Framber Valdez.
No, it was an American player. And
it wasn't Verlander.
I think it was the guy. It was the guy that was it last night? Was it the guy rocking his feet? Because they were zeroing in on his feet. Was the guy that they were talking about doing a little mambo dance?
Hold on. You're now the guy doing the mambo dance was Martinez for the Padres. They're doing some stupid dance. Hold on.
Anyway, it was awesome. Like his pants didn't go all the way to his shoe. He had a white sock on, and it had like a little paint, like where they would sew. That was big when I was growing up.
Are you sure it was the Astros?
No.
Okay, it wasn't.
So it wasn't the Yankees.
It was definitely. It was probably the Padres.
I'm thinking it was the Padres because it was a really funny look. Could have been the Phillies.
No, it was nobody on the Phillies has that.
Yeah, I don't know.
By the way,
it was awesome.
We get it. You're a Phillies fan. How many times are you going to mention the Phillies in this show? We get it. You're a Phillies fan, okay?
Dude, I don't know. Hit the home run last night. Was it Hoskins and the Philly Fanatic was in the background?
Yeah, pretty cool.
Pretty amazing. Yes,
I agree. Yeah, you work for the Brewers, but you're a Phillies fan. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Follow the show at Jim Tara at Epstein Hitting for more riveting pants coverage of how to put on your pants, and stirrups, and everything else. All right, let's get into
and
the
try to
right
keep them
way.
below the knee for crying out loud.
Well, that's what we do here. We teach how to, we teach you hitting the right way, right? We teach you everything about life the right way. I also do that on my other podcast as well, Cross Functionality with Cassie Riley Bosha. Cross dash functionality, by the way. How you feeling? We're halfway through the show. You feeling okay?
I feel
You
great,
feeling
Jim.
okay? All right. All right.
Yeah.
You had a
I've
little,
only used
you
the
had a
mute
little,
button 3 or 4 times. Does
I've
it
seen,
work?
it does work. I'm seeing how the little microphone be muted at the bottom of the screen.
Oh,
So I'm just making sure you're okay.
good.
Absolutely a little bit
Yeah.
under the weather today.
When I go like that, then, call the authorities.
Okay. All right. I'll call the Colorado authorities. I got to make a trip out to Denver soon. Could I come out to Denver and visit?
At any time, Jim. Anytime.
All right. I want to
Don't
go.
come
I
out
want
now, though. The weather gets cruddy. Come out in a month ago.
to. Okay. I'll come out next year.
May to October, the best.
Okay.
Even April.
Hey, how are the Avalanche doing?
I don't know. I only watch when they win the Stanley Cup.
Right. Yeah.
So
You're welcome to
the
come to
season's
Tampa.
too long. I just wait till the end. Is that what we're
Yeah,
doing now, Jim? We're worried about the first week of the NHL season.
I'm just saying, when the Avalanche come to Tampa, if you want to go to a game, we'll go together.
Okay, that'd be fun.
All right. We'll
Yeah,
to
we
the
can go to that
game.
steakhouse too. What's that good steakhouse there?
There's a bunch of them here.
The real famous one. I went there
don't-
once with Steve Stansdoctor.
Oh, Stan's Dr. Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Quite an experience, that place.
Yeah, a great city.
Yeah. All right, let's get on with it.
I'm just saying, if you want to go to a light, but you have to wear your Avalanche shirt. I'm gonna wear my Lightning shirt.
Sweater. I'll go full sweater for you.
Oh, your own sweater. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
don't have one, but I'll find one.
I have a Vasilevsky sweater.
Okay.
So I wear it at every game that I go to, being a season ticket holder and all. You have to, right? I mean, because I don't want to look like a dope not wearing my Vasilevsky, and he's like the best goaltender in the history of the world. All right, let's get into today's topic. Starting late at the plate,
which apparently is what we're doing with this podcast.
We didn't start late today. We were right on time.
We're getting into the topic a little late.
Not really. I mean, we're only, well, let me look here. We're only, I can't see, 22 minutes in. We're good.
Yeah, that's about right.
Well, you started talking about Piazza in his pants. I can't control you at that point.
With the glove.
Tying a catcher's glove. If people want to know, we'll teach you how to do it. Starting late at the plate. Let's talk about the stride, the load, when to get into your load, when to get into your stride that prevents you from starting late. You see major leaguers, you see minor leaguers, college players, softball players, they all kind of do it differently. But the ones who are most successful, obviously, are on time. Harper has a different load than Bregman, right? Alvarez has a different load than Schwarber, but all four guys I just mentioned are always on time, and it really starts with the stride and the load.
Yeah, on time is different for everybody. When do we start? When do we start moving in softball? Because they're only 40, at least at college, they're 43 feet away. Like, you got to really start moving. Usually in Major League Baseball, if you're at the top of your stride, and high school too, at pitch release, then you're going to be okay. If you're still moving up, then we got a problem. In softball, they're usually on their way down sometimes before the ball is even released when girls are throwing really hard. And that's just due to the fact that, yes, it's close, but these aren't 230-pound muscular people that swing really fast, right? So the softball swing takes, usually launch, is 0.17 in softball versus Major League Baseball, which is 0.15, just how long it takes to get the barrel to contact. So you got to get going a little bit earlier in softball. So, the combination of when do I get going? I actually can think Harper, with the amount of movement he has, like last night, my daughter stands up and watches the game because she's a left-handed hitter with an open stance. So whenever Harper's hitting, she'll stand up and kind of like pretend she's hitting. And so as I was looking at her and looking at him on TV, I'm like, he could probably move. Like, he's getting a little jumpy. He started to move a little bit later than I remember. So sometimes just having that eye where that just looks a little off, for the amount of movement you have. So what you need to figure out is how long does my stride usually take? How long does my full rhythm, my load into my back leg, and then my stride? How long does that usually take? And then you try to work that back to when the pitcher breaks his hands. Is usually a pretty good spot. But getting ready, getting weight into your back foot so that you can pick up the front foot is really the key. You can do that as early as you want. When I see players that have issues, it's usually they just pick their front foot up. There's no load into their backside. They just kind of pick it up real fast and then put it down real fast. So, when I see amateur players like my online academy, I test all of them, or I put a timer on their strides where you want to be 3/4 of a second or more with your rhythm. I see a lot that are 0.2 for like 1/4 of a second to a half a second.
Right.
That's how much players are, and they're striding. Essentially, they're striding when the ball's halfway to the plate. They're striding and swinging at the same time.
Yeah. I mentioned in the beginning of the show what Jerry said last week, and we've said it. I can't count how many times at this point. Episode 118, so we've probably said it 1,000 times. Hitting is about timing. If you don't have that timing, you're not going to be able to hit water if you fell out of a goddamn boat, right? It's not going to matter. I wonder with a stride, when you're stepping, when you're loading, sometimes people just do a leg kick just to do a leg kick. And I just wonder if when you're doing that leg kick, which is nonsensical, if you're really not loading properly, if that's causing you to be late and to start late and start your load and your launch late.
Totally could. Yeah. If you have that leg kick, and usually what I'll see is a player's hands will drop, excuse me, when they drop their front foot. And that usually tells me that they're late with their stride and they're just stepping high because they think it's cool, but they're not stepping soon enough. So the more you have going on, the higher the leg kick, if you have an open stance, if you glide a little bit more, all of those things you have to start a little bit earlier to make sure that we get our foot down when the ball's 12 feet from home plate. Just turn on the playoffs, and really, they're gonna tell you exactly what. Watch Manny Machado. I love Manny Machado's swing, and I love his rhythm. Watch him. Just watch him. Watch Harper. Watch anybody. Watch Schwarber. We were talking about, especially the guys that are hot. And then watch Altuve, who's not hot and he's really jumpy. He's always been a fast mover, but he's a fast mover with a big leg kick. So sometimes that gets a little riskier. But just watch when they start to move and how methodical. It's probably my favorite part about Schwarber, and I haven't really watched him very much in the past. I definitely didn't watch him when he was with the Cubs. Did he come up with the Rangers too? I never really saw him.
He came up with the Cubs
before the Red Sox. I saw him a little bit with the Red Sox and then this year, but he is so relaxed. My goodness. And they really pan in on his face, after he'll foul a ball off or he'll take a pitch. He just he's totally in a zone. He's just staring into space. His heart rate looks like it's at 50 beats per minute. There's just no rush and stress to him right now. And that's why whether he's got one strike or two strike, or whether it's a fastball or a breaking ball, he seems like he's getting off good swings. And it starts with that. I mean, we talked about it with the really good, if you can get those really good prospects that he did going to draft, and they kind of qualities where and then when they're in then you cut mechanics, then all of a sudden we have great players. We have big league players. I mean, there's so many great players that never play in the big leagues. There's so many first, second, third, fourth, fifth rounders that get 60 at bats in the big leagues because they have to, because they gave them a lot of money and they never. It's sad, but it is hard. When you said player development is hard, scouting is really hard. Player development is hard. You just hope you get one or two guys every couple of years that can fill up your roster spots. And that's not easy to do.
Right. Well, you say scouting is hard. Who would have thought Chas McCormick, right? Except for the scout who drafted him. Who would have thought he would be such an integral part in the Astros right now, in that machine and what they're doing in the postseason? It's so hard. You know what else is pretty hard too when it pertains to striding and starting late? Counter rotation. Sometimes when you're counter rotating, when you're loading and you're starting to get that torque, as we've talked about before, can you over rotate, over counter rotate? If that makes sense. Can you overdo that, which causes you to start late, muscle up, and to swing slower?
Yeah, because you can get your hands trapped behind you. So there's two
Mhm.
ways to do that incorrectly. One, you just turn your shoulders so much that you can't see the ball with both eyes.
Yeah.
So a good trick is to try to take BP with a patch on, and a lot of players that hit off a tee or hit
Where do they
side
put the
toss,
patch? That's interesting.
yeah, like a pirate. It's like it's
Oh,
pirate
oh,
setting.
oh, on your eye. Okay,
Yeah,
okay. All right.
it's funny. You can
I
have a
didn't.
parrot on your shoulder too if you really want it.
I
It's
guess so.
but no, I mean to make sure you put it on your front eye, just so they can see how far they can turn before their nose gets in the way of their back eye. So you can definitely turn too much that way. Sometimes they don't turn too much with their shoulders, but they'll pull their hands behind them too much, and that will make you late for sure. Behind them, meaning not necessarily towards the umpire, but around behind. Like if you're looking from the center field camera, the hands would be, instead of visible to the camera, they would be like behind the chest. So that's very, very common. Low and behind is very common. They get trapped back there. Um, the main issue I see with that is a counter rotation that's too late. So a lot of people load their shoulders and especially hands when their foot's about to hit the ground, and that usually creates slack and leaves it behind. When you watch the great players, they're typically already loaded with their shoulders and hands when that foot is still 3 or 4 inches from the ground. So they're not rushing the counter rotation. They're not rushing their hands back. They're kind of doing it at the same time as their stride,
Right.
which is what I teach. I want them to kind of load their upper body. And as they load their upper body back, that lifts their front foot up. So it kind of works together.
What's a good mental cue when talking about loading the upper body, loading the upper body? Are we talking about loading the upper body into that back hip, the back glutes?
Yeah,
What's a good
sometimes.
mental
I mean,
cue?
yeah, I mean, those are all good cues. Those would be kind of earlier in the process, I would say,
Yeah.
teach them how to get the weight into their back foot and hip correctly.
Hmm.
Um, the cue that I use for the hands to make sure they don't get back late is, there's a string from the knob to your front foot, and you got to move the knob back to lift your front foot up.
Hmm.
Excuse me. That's a really good key. So their hands and shoulders go back. That starts their stride. That starts their weight going back. So that's a really good one. I had a really good player, college player last year that started to load, like went into a really horrendous slump, and I couldn't see it. They didn't have side views from his college. It was just like behind home plate or behind the pitcher, their games that they were on. And he wasn't loading his hands back until really, really late. And it killed him. And we finally figured it out. The problem was it was after the season. But once we figured it out, he's back, So it's a really important thing. That has to do with the load. But sometimes the load isn't just your legs, right? We got to
Mhm.
make sure our hands and shoulders get in position too.
I'm glad you mentioned the hand loading. When do you start the hand load and the hand torque, if you have such a thing, like, the bat tip? Some guys have that. I'm trying to
Hmm.
think who Machado kind of has like a bat tip,
Hmm.
hand load, wrist torque, wrist load. When do you start that?
I don't know. In the beginning, I don't want to get too. So that's something you don't want to think about, right? We're
That's
talking
funny.
about when you're in the batter's box. When do I load my hands? That's all part of the preparation. So it's usually the beginning of the load. Like
But when you're in
load
practice,
the hand
as a, trying to get your
and,
timing down
and the
also
feet.
in practice.
Yeah, I want the hands and the feet to be friends. I
Okay.
want them to work together. I want them to be on the same uh, channel, so to speak. I don't
Mhm.
want them moving at different rates, and I don't want them moving at different times. I want them to be like Siamese twins.
Okay. So really, you shouldn't worry too much about the hands.
No, but the hands, that's a good when I do drills, we do a lot of drills where we isolate the hand rhythm. We isolate, whatever they're whether a guy tips it or, what I try to do whatever's comfortable for them.
Mhm.
I might say, "Hey, you tried this? Oh, that didn't work. Okay, scrap it." But I'll usually just have them, "Hey, move your hands a little bit. Let's
Mhm.
get your hands moving," and then I'll figure out how do they naturally move their hands? How does their DNA want to move their hands? So we'll do drills where we just concentrate on that. We just had certification last week. We did a lot on that, like break it down. Let's work the hands. Now we can build that hand action or hand rhythm or bat tipping or blah blah blah, whatever they're kind of working on with their hand, and now we can add that to the legs.
Yeah.
But I usually figure them out separately, and then kind of build them back in.
Now, do the great new instructors with an Epstein certification, do they listen to the podcast?
They do.
They do.
I think most
Okay,
of them do.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, they should follow us at Jim Tara and at Epstein Hitting.
They should. Yes. Yes, they should. Well, Nick, who was written in a couple times,
Nick
Camilleri, who's
right. You know why I remember that name?
Bergen County, New Jersey. I got to meet him finally in person. He
was
wrote
that?
in, and then he joined the online academy with his little brother that hits the ball like 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
His little brother's a tank, and then came to certification. And he's a sharp guy, man. He's gonna be a really good instructor.
You know why I remember I know why I remember his last name, because when I first read it by the just really quick, glazing over it looked like calamari. I like calamari.
You do? I was thinking Caminetti, because I used to like.
It's good too.
Caminetti.
These Italian names. I know how he feels, Nick. I know how Nick feels with the Italian. Stance Dr. Steve doesn't have to put up with that.
No,
we do.
Boring.
Yeah, I wouldn't say boring. I wouldn't say boring. I'm just saying that Italian last names are tough. I said it recently to somebody. They're like, "What's your last?" I said my Tarabocchia, and they're like, "Oh my god, how do you say that?" How do I just said it. You want me to say it again? I just said it. All right, we'll wrap. Good job today. I know you're sick.
Thank you.
As evident.
Battle.
Yeah. We battled through this. You battled through this. We did a great job.
It would have been better if I didn't have this beautiful microphone right in front of me.
You got to clean that, by the way, for next week.
Clean it?
Like clean it. You're sick and it's
yeah. Spray it down.
You got to get all the germs off of it. Speaking of which, next week, thanks for listening today, everybody. Starting late. If you have any questions, email us, JimboPodcast21 at gmail.com, or reach out on social media, on YouTube. Do what you got to do. Next week, I was walking yesterday. I was telling you before the show. I have this little note card. I like to, take some notes of what we could talk about in the future, right? I call it like a little show board, if you will. Like you just write down a little, like I think of things, hitting, baseball. I'm like, maybe we can touch on that, or athletically. Maybe I can talk with Cassie about that, right? So I was walking yesterday / running. I was doing a little jog, and then I slowed to a walk. And it was around sunset, 5:30, Saturday evening in Tampa, right? I'm walking. Stance Dr. Steve probably knows what I'm talking about. Walking down the river walk, right? I'm thinking about what some of these hitters are doing in the postseason. And I got to thinking, I was like, you know what? And when I get thinking, you know this. So, sometimes when I overthink, when I get thinking, look out. Everybody just clear the way, clear the field, get out of the way.
The FAA shuts down all flights.
Get out of the way.
Train stop.
The whole. Now you're making me sound selfish. Okay. How's the tea, by the way? Is it helping your voice?
Good. Yeah, it's a good one.
I got to thinking there are 4 things. I'm not going to say them right now. There are 4 things, though, I got to thinking that are the most important things of hitting. And we're finally going to delve into them next week. We talk a lot about mechanics. We talk about approach, right? Okay. I got 4 things. If you don't have these 4 things as a hitter, you ain't going to succeed at any level.
And I know what they are.
You do. I told him before the show. I didn't. And I'm telling you, guy sitting across from me did not tell me these things. I thought of them myself Saturday, as we record this on a Sunday. So that's next week, episode 119, if Ep is indeed available to record. If not, we'll figure something out. But we will be getting to that topic, the 4 things of hitting.
We'll be good.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anything coming up at the lab before we mercifully sign off?
Next big event, we have 2. We have a Scout Yard assessment day. That'll be pretty awesome. So on Tuesday nights, we do Scout Yard, which is 18 and under, sometimes 6 or 17, 18-year-olds, sometimes 16 and under, high school players, where we have, college coaches and our coaches. And so we play games, right? We play scrimmages. So the last week of Scout Yard, we're going to, have everybody go through an assessment for those scouts. So 60, vertical jump, blast metrics, K-vest readings, hit tracks readings. It's kind of like a super inexpensive way to get your perfect game information instead of paying $800. So we have that. And then I have my college deal right after the first of the year. So that's always fun. I get to see all my college guys. We do a prep usually right after January. College baseball, and then college softball players. We do both of that. So that's the next trip to Texas. That's what we got going.
All right, very good. And Ep has a new hat on, a new lab logo. To get that, you can log on to the labbcs.com, right? Right.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. All right. I'm
You
trying
come
to.
see us too.
You
Come see
could.
us. We're good people.
Well, episode 119 next week. Talk to you then. Subscribe and do what you got to do. Happy betting, everybody. Hope everybody's bets go well this week.
Went well. We hope they went well.
Went well
Went
this
well.
past weekend.